dollar is a reflection of a bunch of bananas, well, you have to actually pay a banana every time somebody gives you a dollar, just like the gold, the gold standard. You used to be able to trade in a dollar for a certain amount of gold or a certain amount of silver, and that puts the power back in the private sector's hands. So if I create 10 bananas and I go get $10 for it, I know I can trade those dollars back in for the bananas. Right now, I can't do that because the money's not based on anything. Everybody has this perception that the money actually has value, but the historical truth of fiat money is that it always goes towards what the actual dollar is made of value. So in our case, a little piece of paper is the real value of the money. The only thing that makes it worth more is this perception that we're going to honor that it's worth more. And the more that the Fed just willy-nilly prints off money and we don't know what's going on, the harder it is to take somebody's word for it that this money is worth anything. So this happens in history with fiat money. If anybody knows of a situation where fiat money has not done that, then I'd love to find out. I don't know of anybody who can tell me an example of that. No economists. Historically, it's basically a fact that fiat money tends towards its actual value, which for us would be a little tiny piece of paper. If you look at what happened in Zimbabwe, where that happened, they had hyperinflation, and people used Zimbabwe dollars as wallpapers. You can actually see pictures on the internet of people's houses, and they're all just covered with Zimbabwe dollar bills and stuff, because the money's not worth anything anymore. So another way to really help us out here would be to tie the dollar to something of real value, whether it's gold or silver or a basket of goods, something that actually puts value back into the money. If I'm on a tropical island, a desert island by myself, and I have a choice between having a dozen bananas and a dozen dollar bills, well, you can bet I'm going to want to have a dozen bananas, because that's what real value is. So if there's a bank on that tropical island and I've got a dozen dollar bills that are actually worth a dozen bananas, then I'm going to trade those in and be able to survive. But if I don't, and that money is only worth the paper value of the money, then that doesn't help me out at all. I can't trade it in for anything, especially if inflation gets really bad. So that's one of the things where it'd be really nice to have some more visibility as to what's going on with the Fed, and also not allow this wealth creation between banks to continue going on, because they're not really doing anything to earn the money. They're just creating money out of thin air and then trading it around and creating interest for themselves. So it's a crazy situation. Another option I wanted to talk about was, if the government wants to pay off this debt, they can also look to increase their tax base. So right now we've got a certain number of people that are creating a certain amount of value every year with the GDP. And if we can actually get more people into the system, then it makes sense that there would be more people working, potentially. So you can actually create bigger numbers of GDP. So that is actually an economic incentive for what we're seeing happening right now. We seem to have a little bit of an immigration issue with a lot of people just pouring into the country these days. And I can see from an economic perspective how politicians would want to allow that to happen, because it means more tax money coming into their coffers if they can bring more jobs in. Now, there are some fallacies there. If these people are collecting, welfare and unemployment, then they could actually be a drain to the tax base. So I'm not going to get into all that right now. I just wanted to mention that another strategy for bringing in extra tax money is to just flood the system with more people, which seems to be one of the things going on right now. So I said I'd talk a little bit about the unfunded liabilities. Let's see, back in 2008, Richard Fisher, who's the head of the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas, said, this is the middle of 2008, said that the unfunded liabilities are up to $99.2 trillion, and that's Medicare and Social Security is what that 99.2 trillion refers to, and that also includes the prescription drug benefits that people are getting. So we've got $99.2 trillion in liabilities that the government hasn't figured out how to fund yet. I know that's a big number, but we need to come up with a plan on how to fund all that. It could be slowly and over time. And the other thing is we should watch and see and make sure that number starts going down also. We obviously don't want that number to keep going up, because $99 trillion is a lot of money, especially when you compare it to the GDP that we've got. So you've got programs, you've got Medicare payments that need to be made, you've got Social Security payments that need to be made. A lot of things that are kind of like Ponzi schemes. Social Security, for example, the only way that's going to survive is if you keep having more and more people paying into it. So if the number of people shrink, a lot of people don't realize that Social Security isn't set aside by the government until you retire. It just goes to the government spends it, and then when it's time for you to retire and make a collection, the government pays some of that out of a general fund. So it's literally the people today who are working who are paying that Social Security for people who've retired and are getting their payouts. So that's also inflation adjusted, which I think is interesting. So as I pay into Social Security, when I get my payouts 30 years from now when I retire, those will be adjusted upwards for inflation. Now, the people who are working and paying that amount when I get out, their jobs aren't adjusted for inflation, so they're paying more also. So that's more of another drain on the private sector here. Right now, I'm paying inflation-adjusted dollars to somebody who's retired, but my job, I mean, nobody gets a job, and every year they say, hey, we're going to, give you your inflation adjustment, and that'll be, your increase in salary every year is going to be compensated plus inflation. So that's another area where that's creating more debt for people who actually have jobs and are creating wealth for the country. We got to find a way to stop pulling wealth out of the people who are working for it, and just stop generating so much debt. So if you watch my video that talks about money as debt versus money as assets, then that'll talk a little bit about how we can solve some of the systemic money issues that we have in this country right now. Everybody talks about how we have systemic problems, but nobody's really being clear about it. So that's why I'm hoping to keep talking about and really get some interesting conversation going. I don't know that everything here is clear the way I'm explaining it, but I hope it helps. And I'll catch you guys next time around. All right? Thanks for watching.